Hello! Okay, so this video is all about the stuff that should get covered during your very first banjo lesson. This is all the fundamentals, all the preliminaries that will ultimately make the job of learning the instrument easier and therefore hopefully more fun. So let's get started. Right, okay, so first things first, let's make sure we're sat in a good, comfortable, upright chair. Now, what we're looking for is we're looking for a good amount of back support. It wants to be comfortable because with any luck, you're going to be spending quite a lot of time sat in it. So you want a good amount of back support. You want no arms because that's definitely going to get in the way of your elbows while you're playing. You want to make sure that it's not so high that your lap is kind of sloping away from you because that will mean your banjo will be constantly making a bid for freedom while you're trying to play. So with all those boxes checked, make sure your banjo sat in your lap, and at approximately 45 degrees you want the neck to be angled. So I would say 45 degrees, give or take 10 degrees either way. It's really personal preference, but you probably don't want to be kind of playing up like this, or you don't want to be right down like that. You want to be sort of heading somewhere towards the middle ground, really. What you will find, unless you spent an absolute fortune on your first banjo, which is possibly unlikely, you'll find that the body of your banjo isn't going to be hugely heavy. What you'll find is more expensive banjos, they've got a lot more metal in them, so that makes them heavy, and that means that the weight of the body of the banjo, the pot, is enough to kind of support the weight of the neck. So you let go and it's all supported. Now with a lighter banjo, a cheaper banjo, you'll find that the tendency would be for the neck to drop like that. So that means you're going to be spending a lot of your time kind of physically supporting the weight of your neck whilst you're trying to do all this intricate stuff as well. So that's definitely a no-no. You're more than likely going to get sort of aches and pains in your shoulders and arms anyway while you're learning to play, so while you're getting used to it. So physically supporting the weight of the neck and trying to play stuff on the left hand is only going to make that worse. So consider perhaps putting a strap on your banjo. So if you anchor the strap just below the heel of your neck there, that's the heel of your neck, what will happen is the strap will come up under there, and it will physically support the neck. Attach it just above the tailpiece here, that's the tailpiece, and make sure that it is hanging off your shoulders, and that should sort it. So it should make. There are other ways of doing it as well. You can put like a rubber mat in your lap, that will help. You can put some weights in the bottom of the banjo, that will help too, but I think probably the most sensible way of doing it is to get a strap. So if you've got a strap, another thing to think about is if you were to stand up, would your banjo stay in the same position? I've seen it done so many times where people have spent hours and hours and hours practicing something sat down, and as soon as they stand up, the banjo's kind of moved like that. It's kind of sort of 4 or 5 inches lower than it was when they've done all the hours of practice. That means that everything is different. All your arms, the angles of approach, right, especially the right hand, is all going to be different, and you don't want that. You want to kind of perform in the way that you've practiced. So make sure that you've got your strap adjusted in such a way that if you were to stand up, it would essentially stay in the same relative position to your arms and your body. I think that's about it. Okay. Right. Okay. So finger picks. I've yet to find a single person that likes these to start with. They will almost certainly feel like a ball and chain to begin with, but they are a necessary evil in terms of getting the tone that you associate with the banjo, or this style of banjo, and they really do help in the long run with fluidity and speed. It's very difficult to play without them once you've got used to it. So the convention is to have 2 metal finger picks and a plastic thumb pick. Now, the metal finger picks, they come in a fairly standard form. So what you need to do is you need to put them on your fingers and you bend them around. So there's a fantastic book called Masters of the 5-String Banjo that I heartily recommend. That one of the things it does is it shows the right hands of I can't remember how many notable banjo players, but lots and lots of great banjo players. And the one thing it illustrates is how differently everyone has their picks. So there is no one way of doing this, but what you really, I mean, if there was such a thing as normal, then I would say my picks are fairly, sorry, I'm trying to get it so it's on the black backdrop. So I would say mine are fairly normal. You've got, it's sort of following around the finger, and it's a little bit of a blade poking out as well, so you can see that. And each one is very specific to your to each finger. You've got that one will be bent into shape for your middle finger, and that one will be very specifically bent into shape for your index finger. And it's a constant thing, you know. You put them on and you tweak them and push them around. And the perverse reality, of course, is by the time you get them just right, that's about when they're worn out or you've lost them. So and you have to start all over again. But so they're constantly a work in progress. Because they're specific to the fingers that they're bent into shape for, you need to be able to identify which is which. I use two different gauges. I use, in fact, I should mention, I use Dunlop picks, mostly because of the most readily available. Because if I do lose them, I want to be able to replace them fairly quickly. So I use Dunlop picks, and they come in a variety of gauges. Now I use a 20 gauge, that's the thickness of the steel that they're made from. A 20 gauge on my index finger and an 18 gauge on my middle finger. Now, if I'm honest, that was because they were the first picks that I had, and it just got that way. So I just got used to it. But the good thing about that is I know which one is which. I know that the 18 is my middle finger and the 20 is my index finger. So if you are using the same gauges, or the picks that you end up using don't have gauges, then make sure that you've kind of marked them in such a way as you can identify which pick goes on which finger. So some people drill a little hole, or they might file a little corner out, but you want to make sure that you don't end up putting your index finger pick on your middle finger and vice versa. So the other thing you want to be aware of is, as well as kind of bending them to fit snugly on your fingers, they need to be quite tight, so they might be uncomfortable to start with. So as well as bending them to fit snugly on your fingers and getting that amount of blade and that curvature to your liking, you might end up having to sort of like twist them on that axis as well, because depending on how your hand approaches the banjo, you want the picks to hit fairly square on to the strings. So you'll notice after you've been practicing for a while, you'll get a little polished area on these picks, and if it's right on the edge of the pick, then you know you've got to twist it and sort of get that polished area just towards the middle a bit more. The thumb pick I use, as I say, the convention is to use a kind of a plastic thumb pick. It's actually a very hard acrylic. I use quite a common pick called a Golden Gate. There's a variety. I would say that is a kind of middle size pick. I don't know if you can see that middle size pick. You can get thin ones. The good thing about the thin ones is they sort of keep themselves out of the way, but the problem is they don't sort of they, especially when they warm up, they don't kind of anchor themselves to the thumb very well, so they've got a tendency to twist or fall off. So I've found I've sort of settled on the middle ground with the thumb pick. The bigger picks tend to be a little bit cumbersome. I've also, sometimes people get that little part of the pick sort of caught on the string when they're picking, especially if you're picking quite hard. You might end up sort of like getting that bit caught on the string. So what I would recommend there is to kind of file it back a little bit, but again, be a bit careful, because you'll end up getting to a point where it doesn't hold the thumb well enough. So be a bit aware of that. You can spend a fortune on picks. There's a brand now that are very popular called not Golden Gate, what are they called? Blue Chip. So Blue Chip picks, a lot of people really swear by them, they love them. I personally don't get on with them, but again, it's personal preference. So as I say, a lot of people love them. So, you know, give them a go. If you like it, then spend your 40, 50 pounds, dollars, whatever, which is quite a lot of money, especially if you lose them quite a lot, which is something I'm prone to doing. So finger picks, you can there's a lot of different brands. The most common ones are, as I say, the Dunlop, and there's also National. If you go for vintage Nationals, I've seen people advertising recently vintage National picks for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So I can't see the point, but again, I've never tried them, so maybe I'm missing something. But yeah, that's it for picks. Right, okay, so the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get used to anchoring your hand, your right hand, on the head of the banjo. The head is the skin. So you can see on my banjo that my ring finger and my little finger on my right hand have actually worn the frosting away from the head of the banjo. So that kind of shows that that's what I'm doing. So in an ideal world, you will be anchoring both your ring finger and your little finger on the head of the banjo. Now what that does is that gives your right hand a level of stability when it's picking, but also it kind of in a way acts as your eyes. It gives you a point of reference. So because you're more likely going to be wanting to watch what's going up on this end, and than you are going to be watching your right hand, at least sort of further down the road. While you're learning your first rolls, then by all means, you know, focus on your hand and get it right. But these will help. They give you a point of reference. So that's why we do that. So ideally, you will be anchoring both your little finger and your ring finger up, both of them on the head of your banjo. Now, if that's not comfortable, and persevere, none of this will be comfortable to start with. So persevere with it for a while. Now, as is the case with a lot of these things, it's up to you to kind of work out, if it's ever going to be comfortable. Now, if you come to the conclusion that there's something fundamentally not right for you with anchoring both your ring finger and your little finger, then move on to plan B. Plan B would be just your ring finger. Just anchor your ring finger. And that's absolutely fine too. There's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. So if that's still uncomfortable, then plan C is just your little finger. Now that is okay. The only slight danger is that your ring finger will almost certainly follow your middle finger around. Well, your middle finger is going to be doing a lot of work picking, and your ring finger is going to be following it around. Or it's quite likely that's going to be what's going on. So that's okay as well, but there is a possibility that that's going to get in the way of your middle finger. So if you have had to resort to plan C, just keep an eye on things. Make sure that your ring finger isn't impeding anything that your middle finger is doing. So what else is there? Okay, so once you've decided how you're going to anchor your hand, I would suggest just resting your thumb on the fifth string. The fifth string is the one closest to you. It's sort of counterintuitive. At least I thought so when I was starting out. So the strings are fifth string, fourth string, third string, second string, first string. So the fifth string, rest your thumb on the fifth string, rest your index finger on the third string, and rest your middle finger on the first string, and have your hand anchored in whatever way you've decided you're going to do it, and that I would call the home state. It's a position for you, so you could sit there for while you're watching the TV or something like that without making a noise, without irritating your partner. Just sit there and get your hand used to being in this position, because it is a bit weird to start with, and if you want to irritate your partner, they just start doing that. Okay, so yeah, that's your right hand anchored. Right, okay, we're getting dangerously close to actually making some noise now. So tuning the banjo. So by far the most common way to tune a banjo in this style of music, bluegrass and the three finger picking style, is an open G tuning. So that means that if you hit the banjo, you get a chord for free. You get an open G chord. So the notes, I'll name the notes. So the 5th string, remember that's the closest one to you. That's a high G. Then you go to the 4th string. You got a low D. Now, I should have mentioned this before actually, but the banjo is, I would say, almost unique in as far as the strings aren't in order, or not in perfect order at least. So with a guitar, for instance, the closest string to you will be the lowest string, and the furthest away string will be the highest string. Whereas on a banjo, we've got this this little fella here that starts at the fifth fret. These are frets, these lines going across. So it starts at the 5th fret, and it's sort of the odd one out really. It's some people call it a drone string. It's the 5th string. There's another name for it as well, but I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a more sort of correct name for it, I think, from the sort of classic banjo style. So the 5th string, that's tuned to a high G. The 4th string is tuned to a low D, and then the 3rd string is another G, and that's going to be a G an octave below the 5th string. So you've got G, D, G, and then the 2nd string is a B, and then the 1st string is another D, an octave above that one. Okay, so G, D, G, B, D, and then you play all those together, and you've got a harmonious G major chord. Okay, so these days, most of us have got smartphones, and you can get there's a load of apps that will help you tune your banjo. So as long as you get your 4th string in tune, so remember that's a low D. If you put your finger on the 5th fret, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just snug it up just behind the fret. You don't want to be on the fret because you'll kill the note. You don't want to be too far away because it won't fret cleanly. Just get it, a couple of millimeters behind the fret, and you hit that. And I suggest you hit it twice because it's such a transient sound, the banjo. So really, your ear has to be very fast to hear that note and be able to log it in order to reference it for the next string. So I would strongly recommend hitting it twice or even 3 times. So you've really got a good sort of strong sense of where that note is, and then you play the open 3rd string. Let's tune it. And just gradually keep hitting it. Get it roughly in position. Go back to the 4th string at the 5th fret. Hit it a few times. Get that in your ear. So it's a little bit flat, a little bit sharp. And if you've gone sharp, just and you have to go back down again, then it's a good idea just to grab the string just between your thumb and your middle finger. Just give it a little pull, just to take the slack out of it, and tune up to it. Always be tuning up to the note you want to go to. Anyway, so then you go to the next string, which is so you've got the 4th string now is in tune. The 3rd string is in tune roughly, and you put your finger on the 3rd string at the 4th fret. Hit that a few times, and hit the 2nd string a few times. I can see I haven't done a very good job. That's better. So hit that a few times and tune up. Do the same with the 2nd string at the 3rd fret. Hit it a few times. Hit the 1st string, tune that one up, and then put your index finger on, or whatever finger you like, in fact, on the first string at the 5th fret. Hit that a few times, and then hit the 5th string and tune up. Now, what I would suggest is, because you've got because the banjo is essentially like a membrane with a bridge. The bridge isn't attached to anything. It's just sitting there. So if I was to radically change the tuning of the 4th string, for instance, what will happen is essentially the bridge will kind of rock very slightly on the head of the banjo. So that will affect the tuning of all the other strings. So what I find I have to do, especially if it's wildly out of tune, is I tune up. I do what I call a coarse tune, and then I go around the whole thing again and do a fine tune. Yeah. What else was I going to say about tuning? Yeah, tuners, the ones you'll get on your Android or Apple phones are very good, or they're not bad. Be slightly wary of cheap ones that you attach onto the headstock. They can sometimes be very easy to please, and that's not what you want in a tuner. You want a pedant of a tuner. You want one that's, because pretty much, you know, anything you're going to play, if it's not perfectly in tune, or as in tune as you can possibly get it, then it's never going to sound good. So make sure that you are in tune. So I would spend a little bit more money on a tuner than you. I mean, as I say, you can find tuners that are very cheap, but they, you know, basically you'll tune up and they'll go, "Hey, that's great," and it's not. So spend a little bit more money on a tuner, or use one on your phone. They're pretty good. Maybe read some reviews, find out which ones are best. Yeah, that's it. Right, okay, so at last we're going to get to actually play something. So your right hand's dressed with its picks, and it's anchored, and you've got this home position, and you're in tune, and you're sat comfortably, your shoulders are dropped. So we're going to play a couple of rolls now. So the first one I would recommend would be if you place your thumb on the 3rd string, and then your index finger on the 2nd string, and then 1st string with your middle finger. I'm being very specific about the fingers that you use. You have to use the correct fingers for these rolls. So thumb, index, middle, and that is 3, 2, 1, and then you're going to take your thumb all the way out to the 5th. And then you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 1. That's middle, index, thumb, middle. So I'll call the fingers, then I'll call the strings. Thumb, index, middle, thumb, middle, index, thumb, middle. Call the strings. 3, 2, 1, 5, 1, 2, 3, 1. Okay, so what you're looking for is one of the most common mistakes people make when they're learning to play the banjo, especially to start with, is they try and play too fast. So if you play too fast, what will happen is your shoulders will go up, your breathing will become erratic, you'll build up sort of lactic acid in your arms, and it will have the opposite effect. Whereas if you can learn to play very smoothly and effortlessly, and with good technique and good tone at slow and medium tempos, then speed should come fairly easily. So make sure that you are, you know, keeping it nice and smooth. So you want even volume out of each of the strings, at least for now. And you want an even space in between each of the strings, in between each of the notes as well. And then once you've got that running nicely, go over and over and make sure that you can't hear the join, because What you'll probably start by doing is play the roll. Take a big deep breath and start again. That's okay to start with, but really what you want is you want to not hear the join. Right, okay, so that's called the forward-backward roll. Let's do the same again with all the same things apply with the what I'm going to call the thumb in and out roll. So that's going to be 3, 2, 5, 1, 4, 2, 5, 1. The other thing that's going to happen probably or possibly is while you're practicing these rolls, you're concentrating on getting the notes right. You'll probably find gravity is going to leave you, and your hands will start to rise off, and you'll find you're picking these rolls, and you're not going to be anchored. So every few seconds, just keep an eye on yourself. Make sure that you are anchored and everything's going to plan. Okay, so again, so the thumb in and out roll. 2, 5, 1. 4, 2, 5, 1, and again 3, 2, 5, 1, 4, 2, 5, 1. I'll call the strings, the fingers, sorry, thumb, index, thumb, middle, thumb, index, thumb, middle, and so on and so forth. And get that so you can just hypnotically do that over and over and over and over again. Keep it nice, nice and smooth, even in volume, even in tempo. Finally, one of the most useful rolls in bluegrass banjo is the Foggy Mountain Breakdown roll, named after the tune Foggy Mountain Breakdown, surprisingly enough. So this is the tune, if you're not familiar with it. It's the one that was used extensively in all the car chases for the film Bonnie and Clyde. So it's a great tune, and you should learn it as soon as possible because it's fun. Okay, so this will get you on the road. So it's a great roll that's useful all over the place, but it's got a slightly odd thing where the thumb comes in. I'll play it and then I'll talk about it. So 2, 1, 2, 1, 5, 2, 1, 5, and I'll call the fingers. This is very specific fingering again. So index, middle, thumb, middle, thumb, index, middle, thumb. 2, 1, 2, 1, 5, 2, 1, 5. Index, middle, thumb, index, middle, thumb. Now, most people say, well, why are you taking your thumb in there? Because you could quite easily go 2, 1, 2, 1, 5, 2, 1, 5, index, middle, thumb, index, middle, thumb. So I think there's two reasons for that. With all of this stuff, you want to kind of even the workload between all three of the digits that you're using. That will kind of help with the smoothness and the flow of the music and speed ultimately as well. So the more evenly you can assign the workload to the individual digits, the better. The other thing is the thumb is built entirely differently to your index and middle fingers, and it's stronger, it's shorter, it's stubbier. So if you were to play it at speed, you would probably, I'll exaggerate, you've got a pulse there. As I say, I'm exaggerating, but it does give you a bit of a pulse. Anyway, so that's the Foggy Mountain Breakdown roll. So if you've got all those three rolls, then just practice those over and over again. You couldn't practice them too much, possibly. And that's your right hand on its way. Right, so the left hand, so we've done a load of work on the right hand, so the left hand's starting to feel a bit left out now. So as I've already said, because of the way the banjo's tuned, we already get a chord for free. We get the G chord. So the two chords most associated with a G chord, certainly in the key of G, would be the C chord and a D chord, or a D7 in this instance. So they're two very easy ways of playing three very common chords. So G, C, and D. You could, just with those three chords, you could play literally thousands of songs, just with those three chords in the right order. So, okay, as I say, you've got G for free. The C chord, I'm going to, again, like with the right hand, I'm going to be very specific about the fingers that I'm using. So your ring finger on the first string at the second fret. Remember, these are frets. And remember that you want them not to be too far away from the fret, or you don't want to be on the fret. You want to be just snugged up behind it, so you get a good clean tone out of that note. So that's your ring finger. Now your index finger is going to drop onto the second string at the first fret. Same thing applies. You want it just up behind. So you've got two strings covered now. The third string stays open, so nothing needed there. And the fourth string, with your middle finger, you're going to play at the second fret. So you've got. So if you were to play one of the rolls. You've got music. Okay, so the next chord we're going to do is this D7 chord. So just two strings fretted on this one. Index finger again on the second string at the first fret. Remember, don't touch the fret, or don't go too far away. You want it just behind. And the middle finger goes on the third string at the second fret. And we'll play that same roll. So you've got three chords: G, C, D7, and G. So further down the line, when your right hand's starting to feel very comfortable with the rolls, and it can you can leave your right hand on autopilot to a certain extent, and the same with the left hand. You could start to put the two together. Just play maybe a forward backward roll, C chord, D7 chord, back to G. Right, okay, so assuming you've got to grips with all of that, you should be more than ready to start learning a few tunes. So feel free to contact me through my website, www.leonhunt.com, or even through Facebook. We can book some Zoom or Skype lessons, or even FaceTime if that's your preferred platform. I would say in the meantime, make sure that you play every day. A little bit of practice every day is better than doing 4 hours one day and nothing for the next 2. So try and do a little and often is good. Lots and often is even better, of course. but yeah, try and do a little bit every day. Make sure you leave your banjo out so it's not a big hoo-ha. You don't have to go to your banjo case, open it up, get the banjo out, and it doesn't become a massive chore. You know, just walk up to it, play for 5 minutes, put it down, move on. You know, whatever. But yeah, try and play every day, even if it's only for a couple of minutes. But the other thing I would suggest is listen to as much banjo music as you can. because it will help you form a good, strong opinion about the kind of banjo player that you'd like to become yourself. So that's good. It's also, as you progress and you start learning some tunes, you'll start recognizing phrases and techniques and stuff like that in other people's playing. So you'll end up listening very critically. It's also worth mentioning that whilst you're listening critically, it's good to not lose the more general way of listening as well, because it's easy to lose that. Once you start listening to all the nuts and bolts, you kind of lose the music a little bit. So bear that in mind as well. But yeah, in the meantime, have fun with it, and I hope to hear from you. Bye.